Let's go through the papers once again. Joining us today, as you know, former advisor to Boris Johnson, Oscar Redrop, and broadcaster Liz Kershaw. Good morning, you two. Let's kick off, Liz, with The Sun, looking at 500,000 migrants coming to the UK.
Just say Trixie in North Wales isn't sending me a card either, so we're all doomed.
Very tight, Trixie. Send me one, Trixie.
No, she prefers Oscar now. No, that's Pauline, who's in Cambridge. Anyway,
the heck? Is this
you
a
miserable
dating agency?
Text now.
Right.
Oh, it's miserable.
Migrants. Well, we discussed this earlier, and I was saying let's take the hysteria out of 500,000 and explain the breakdown of that: Ukrainians, Afghans, etc. It's across the spread in The Sun today, and they're saying, I said it was the equivalent of Leeds, they're saying it's the equivalent of Liverpool. So, however they make up, it's a lot of people coming to this country. But can I just say, you've been discussing about Keir Starmer and what seems to have been his road to Damascus, or red light bulb. Not red light bulb, sorry, light bulb moments. And I was stunned when I heard him say that this week. When the whole debate was going on about Brexit 6 years ago, and people were making sweeping accusations. If you were a Brexiteer, you were anti-migrants, you were anti-immigration, and so you were racist, you're a bigot and everything else. And I was very much against the free movement, I still am, the free movement of people and mass migration, because, and I was astounded that it wasn't the Labour Party saying this, look what's on the tin, Labour sticking up for workers, because what this has brought about is really a sort of modern day equivalent of slavery. Okay, people might come here and work and actually get minimum wage, but what we're actually saying is in Europe, and I generalise across the whole of Western Europe, we're saying, let these people come in and do the jobs cheaply that we don't want to do, we apparently can't get people to do. And so, let's, for instance, last Friday, I asked the guys at the car wash, where are you all from? They're all from Iran. Okay, well, am I happy that some Iranian guy, I was asking about the terms and conditions, I was pleased to get my car washed. Am I happy that some Iranian lads are living in bunk beds in a hostel 30 miles down the road and are busting every morning? I don't think that's the way we should be treating workers any more than replacing Royal Mail staff with 0 hours contract bill. So all these people are bleeding hearts. So, let's bring in these poor migrants. Of course, Afghans, Hong Kong, Ukraine, wherever but just to say, bring on your cheap labour. Is very imperialistic and white supremacist, and it's only now that the Labour Party, or the head of the Labour Party, is actually saying, you know what, we should be looking after our indigenous workers, we should be making sure people are given skills, we should be making sure they have proper wages. Even in the health service, which is topical because the nurses, a lot of the migrants coming in the last year, for the health service, because we don't train our own young people to be doctors, because it's more expensive than pinching doctors from an African country. We charge our nurses £60,000 to get trained, and they have to have bursaries, and then they're paying it off. We should be paying for their training rather than importing cheap labour. So I say, and you'd never thought, would you, Stephen, in all the years we've been doing this, I would say, well done, the leader of the Labour Party.
Oh, well, but you see, that's what he's aiming for, and if that's enough,
he'll clean up.
If there's enough people like you to change your position on, then he's onto a winner, isn't he?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the thing with Keir Starmer, which is interesting, is that he says he's doing this kind of all things to all men thing at the moment, and he's facing quite a few ways on different issues. That line that Liz quite right to pick up on will cause him a lot of problems to the left of the Labour Party. So I could see him in a few months probably just slightly watering down what he said this week on immigration, going back over there.
If he wants to keep winning.
Not if he wants to be elected.
True.
It's all fight for the centre ground, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mind you, let's have a look at the Telegraph, Oscar. A Tory, who's behind a Tory rebellion?
Well,
Can't be, as it says to this, Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, who painted over Boris Johnson's £112,000 wallpaper.
She never.
Yeah.
I didn't know she'd done that.
What, she just got a roller and tray and whacked on the Dulux?
No.
Philistine.
revolving door of number 10 politics.
Yeah.
But I think rebellion's a little bit of is quite a strong term. But I think it's interesting when we talked about Rishi Sunak at the moment, and how I think there's a perception maybe that the government is just in a slight holding pattern of almost managed decline. I don't think people really know what the government's slightly more forward-looking vision for the country is at the moment. I mean, I really don't think people know what. But so I think what Johnson and Liz have done specifically on this issue. So we'll talk about the issue first of all on onshore wind. So the former PM's challenged Sunak's authority by demanding an end to the onshore wind farm ban is an interesting example of this, because, one, energy independence has probably been, I don't think it's absolutely one of the top issues of the day. The fact that we're trying to almost put dampeners on that just seems a little bit ludicrous. And I think the key thing about here as well is that it's also jobs, and it's just, I think you get really proactive prime ministers, and I always thought when I worked with Boris Johnson, he was very front foot, very proactive, and I feel like he's just going to gently remind the government at times when they feel like, we can maybe just take things, do the managerial approach to stuff, which sometimes is great, but actually, what is our forward-looking, proactive,
We're just
vision
surviving
for the
at the
country?
minute, aren't we?
No, absolutely, and actually, you know what? That's not good enough.
No.
That's not good enough. And I think, come the next election again, we talk about the whole intro of issues that the government has. I think if people do not understand, it's been at charge level that Keir Starmer, what does he stand for? What's his vision? And I think, the government have to be careful of not also, the electorate turning around and going, apart from you bringing me bad news, I don't know what
exactly. That's all there is.
Yeah. What do you stand for? What's your vision?
I know you can say that the situation is bad and worthy of, doom mongering, but that's all Rishi Sunak seems to do.
And
tell us how bad things are.
And it's really difficult when you're telling people, in the budget that we had a few weeks ago, you're having to make your lives going to be impacted. You're going to have to make real sacrifices. I think the British people can, do the stiff upper lip stuff, but they want to know why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They want to know what that future direction is.
Well, yeah, you see, in terms of that, and it follows on, this is also in the Telegraph, Liz, looking at the nurses' strike. They're saying it's going to strand people in hospital at Christmas. I mean, the nurses are going on strike, the RCN, because the health secretary is refusing to even sort of meet to negotiate, to talk about anything. Now that, to me, that just begs
It's his job, isn't it?
Yeah, there's such a mess. I mean, you've got nurses' pay increase slightly, but not as much as they want. But then you've got nurses leaving the NHS.
Retention's the big issue.
Leaving the NHS and going straight to an agency and getting paid hundreds and hundreds of pounds a day.
For doing the same job.
For doing the same job. And the local management just reacts in desperation and hire them, and the same with locum doctors. And I was reading about the NHS the other day, and in this article it had quotes from, and loads of them, I can only remember 3, it had quotes from NHS England, NHS Resolution, the NHS Confederation, and I wrote a list and I looked up what all these people do. Talk about layers of management and quangos, and it said that 5,000 jobs it was in one, management jobs in one of these things. Well, why can't you get rid of them and pay more nurses and doctors? But the article itself is about the strike and the days which your reporter cited for the strikes, the 15th and the 20th of December, and the thrust of this one is you're going to get elderly people who are fit to go home and stranded in their beds in hospital over Christmas simply because there's nobody to prepare them and discharge them for release. And it will exacerbate it, but it's happening now. I know somebody who's sitting in hospital and they just can't get him out because there's no care home. And I've witnessed with my relatives the procedure for discharging somebody, and you see other patients on the ward. They get somebody out of bed at like 8 o'clock in the morning, all washed and dressed and sitting there with their bag and their handbag on the knee. And that person is still there at 6 o'clock at night because there's been nobody to bring their medication up from the pharmacy.
But that's why the nurses are striking, isn't it? They are fed up. It's not just about pay. It's about understaffing and conditions, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe we should be listening to them more.
Well, look, we're out of time.
That's ridiculous.
Liz, Oscar, thank you both very much
you.
indeed. Let's just...
But you have been inundating us with wonderful pictures.